Entrepreneurially Thinking is a presentation of BioSTL and CET, Center for Emerging Technologies, with Rare Gem Productions, changing the way you view new ventures, including you on the pathway to success with your business in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. Here's your hosts, Cheryl and Christy. Now let's get thinking entrepreneurially.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. Our goal is to energize your entrepreneurial mindset and create pathways for business success in the St. Louis marketplace and beyond. I'm Christy Maxfield.
And I'm Dr. Cheryl Watkins-Moore, the Director of Bioscience Inclusion for BioSTL. Hey, Christy.
How are you?
We're back.
Yes, we are. And season 5.
I was going to say, in our 5th season, guys. You guys are making it happen for us.
We've been teeing up lots of great guests, and I can't believe that next week we start planning season 6.
Wow.
So we just keep rocking and rolling.
Absolutely.
52 weeks a year, baby.
52 weeks, and we've talked to everybody.
Yes.
We are continuing to talk to more and more people, so you guys need to tune in as often as possible.
Yes, and the reason we're able to keep talking to great people is because of the support of our founding sponsors, BioSTL and CET.
Yes.
So check out their website, find out about the Ignite program, Square One Ignite program, and all the other interesting things. You know, you can always catch Cheryl at least 3 times a year with an evening with as part of the Inclusion Initiative. One of our recent guests was a guest on that for that program as well.
And our Vision annual conference.
And that'll be in the fall. Always good things to keep up with our sponsors. And we're always looking for new sponsors and new listeners.
Yes.
So if you'd like to be part of the Entrepreneurially Thinking family, let us know. And be sure to share your favorite episodes with your friends. They can find us on iTunes, Spreaker, Facebook, and LinkedIn, wherever you find your favorite shows.
I was going to say, wherever you are, we want to be.
Excellent.
So
where are we today?
We are at the intersection of medicine, entrepreneurship, and design.
It's a lovely intersection.
That is a great intersection, and that's where MedLaunch resides. So what is MedLaunch? MedLaunch is a nonprofit biomedical incubator that solves healthcare problems with interdisciplinary teams of students at St. Louis University. That's a lot of information.
It is, and we're going to break that down.
I was just going to say, see, we have...
I know, brain shared. Mm-hmm.
So when we come back, we're going to be speaking with the founders and leaders of the organization, whose mission is to improve the standard of healthcare through the engineering and design of creative solutions, while also fostering a community of entrepreneurship and collaboration at St. Louis University. So stay listening.
CET, the Center for Emerging Technologies, is a proud founding sponsor of this Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast. We want you to know all about the great things they are up to. Square One offers 2 training options. Square One Ignite, a 4-week program created to help founders quick start their business model validation process. Or Square One Bootcamp, an in-depth 10-week, 50-hour program that combines formal instruction with hands-on learning, networking, and mentoring. To learn more about Square One Bootcamp or Square One Ignite, visit CETSTL.com. And for your renewed and continuing support, CET, we say thank you.
I'm John Hardin. I'm the Executive Director of MedLaunch at St. Louis University. To me, entrepreneurially thinking means being aggressive, being innovative, and absolutely willing to think out of the box.
As Cheryl mentioned, today we're sitting down with some of the leaders and entrepreneurs who are involved with MedLaunch at SLU. John Hardin, a phenomenal businessman and executive director of the MedLaunch program, and Lucas Rydberg, co-founder and team leader of Phase 3, a startup that was created as part of the MedLaunch program, are with us. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. Great. So, John, as Cheryl said, MedLaunch is this interdisciplinary nonprofit biomedical incubator at the intersection of medicine, entrepreneurship, and design. What the heck does that mean?
What does that mean?
That is an awful mouthful.
I know, but it's all great words.
Big
too.
words, a lot of great buzzwords. What does that mean?
Well, at St. Louis U, the MedLaunch program focuses on the School of Medicine, the School of Engineering, and the School of Business to bring people from all 3 disciplinary areas into play to consider and solve unmet needs related issues in healthcare. And that's actually a function of problems if you will, solicited from the staff of the St. Louis University School of Medicine. So these are real-world, real-life problems from physicians taking care of people every day. So that's what we work on.
I was going to say, so they're seeing the need right there, and they're bringing what they see are needs in the environment. Is it just physician, or is it nurses? Is it all encompassing?
That's really a great question. And if there are nurses listening to this, we'd like to have more input from them. But in theory, it's all disciplines that surround the patient in healthcare. In reality, it's mostly physicians who've submitted problems so far.
Okay. Right.
And how do the students get involved? Where are they in the trajectory of their education? You're drawing from those 3 schools, so what stage are they at when they come and raise their hand to be part of MedLaunch?
That's a great question. They're at varying stages in their matriculation through the university. So, for instance, this year on our leadership team, we have 2 juniors in engineering study. We have people who are second and third year in medical school. The founding group in MedLaunch were pretty well into medical school before MedLaunch came about. So we'd really welcome people from their first year at the university or first year in university out through their 4th year in medical school or their PhD program or wherever they are.
I think it's fantastic, because what you're doing is, by drawing from different disciplines, it's the whole diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and looking at how can you solve problems with all these different facets around the table, looking at the same problem, right?
And Lucas, you obviously participated as a student. How did you get involved with MedLaunch?
Well, I got involved as a team leader after I was completing a summer research project with a professor of mine. This was a smartphone-based medical devices research, so I have an engineering background, biomedical engineering.
Okay.
My co-founder and I, his name's Dan Ebling, we worked on this smartphone-based medical device project with our advisor, Dr. Andy Hall. And
what year were you?
This was the summer between my junior and senior year of school, so a couple years ago.
Okay.
What year is it now?
We're not sure. We just keep moving.
So at the conclusion of this project, we realized that what we had made was a much more affordable EKG device, for measuring heart. Dan made this really cool circuit that was really accurate. It was portable, mobile, just had a cool battery that you could recharge. I wrote a smartphone app to collect all this data and store it. And our professor told us one day he was driving in and heard on NPR about a specific problem that what we had created could potentially help solve.
Wow.
So he put us in touch with MedLaunch. He's on the advisory board. So we were able to bring our idea to MedLaunch and say, can we be a team this year? It's kind of how we got our start.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool. So you were working on it before you even knew there was a place to incubate these ideas and take them beyond the lab.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of a great thing about MedLaunch, because we were both engineers, so we were really concerned with the technology. We were writing code and building circuits. And it wasn't until we had somebody with a little more business savvy come to us and say, there's going to be a market for this. You guys could potentially build this and sell it.
Wow. So, John, how do if I'm over at SLU, how do I get involved as a student? Do I just find you, or I find one of these teams?
A professor who knows you?
A professor that knows you?
Well, the MedLaunch Executive Board is actively recruiting right now students for participation for next year. So they will be at the business school, they will be at the medical school, they will be at the School of Engineering with a little tabletop set up and informational brochures about what the program is all about. They will also, we're certainly inviting people to Demo Day, which is the culmination of this year's cohort of MedLaunch projects. That's scheduled for April 18th. At the St. Louis Science Center, so we would love to have you and many of your listeners join us as well.
Absolutely. Do I have to be a junior or a senior in my tenure at the university, or can I get started as a freshman if I have an interest?
You can start as a freshman.
We would love to have you start as a freshman.
Ooh,
that would be perfect.
You need to go back to school.
I was just about to say that is not going to happen.
But the program is deeper and richer the longer people are involved.
Okay.
So if people come in and work through their freshman year with us, by the time they're juniors, seniors, they're leading projects, they're leading teams, potentially leading the organization.
So I could
itself.
join and not have a lot of experience. Maybe how do I do that?
Freshman level experience.
That is
wet behind the ears,
right?
But I would imagine you need to be curious.
You need to be curious. You need to be motivated and passionate about learning a little bit about the world of entrepreneurship. And you don't have to be excessively passionate about it. You have to be interested and curious, and willing to come in and work with a team and be part of a group.
Cool.
But really, this is about experience. So this is where you gain experience in a very real world process.
That's great
for product development in this particular space.
And Lucas, how was that experience of taking what was really for you a lab experiment, so to speak, and then getting paired with the business folks who could say, here's the potential we see?
It was fantastic. I'm personally a very curious person, so I love learning about all kinds of different things. So I really enjoyed all of it. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult when people are throwing around terms that you don't really know. People are saying valuation cap, and you're like, what is that? I've never heard that stuff before.
What's your cap table look like?
Exactly,
all that kind of jargon.
You're like, it looks great. I don't know. My cap table
Have you noticed I've highlighted it in blue?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
As long as it's not a hockey stick, I think you're okay.
Those are the projections. We want the cap table to be nice and solid.
Right. So, I mean, as long as you're able to come at it with the approach that you know that you're learning and you don't know everything, and that's okay. And that, you know, you have people who are teaching you, helping you through it. It was a really great experience. And
how do you manage that in addition to your course studies? Because, you know, it's not like you guys are just, you know, I was a political science major. This isn't a poli-sci class load, let's just say. So how do you balance the demands of all of that?
It can be difficult, but it was something I enjoyed. So I didn't have problems really working late nights doing that kind of stuff. I was also lucky because it was my senior design project as an engineer. So that worked really well for me.
It worked well in your schedule.
Yes, exactly. I was kind of forced to do some of that stuff anyway with my senior design project.
2 birds, 1 stone. We love that.
Exactly. So how do the teams form, John? I mean, how are mentors involved? How are the clinicians involved with the students?
Absolutely. Lots of different ways. So the teams form generally around their interest in particular problem sets or particular issues. Ideally, we try to have a good mix of business students, engineering students, and life sciences medical students on each team.
Sure.
Sometimes we do better at that than other times, but in general, that's the model for what we do. So that's how the teams are formed. Ideally 4 to 6 people, because you did mention a really sensitive issue. Workload is a function of academic load. So the more people there are, the better that gets distributed, and the less onerous the program is. And it's not onerous at all. That's a poor choice. Please edit that out.
You hear that, Shoot?
So, but at any rate, then the physicians may be involved as advisors to each individual team. So, for instance, this year, 2 of the professors of orthopedic surgery are advising one of the teams. They have a deep interest in what this group is doing, and they have been invaluable in delivering clinical insight into the project.
That's great.
Also on our advisory board, we have 4 practicing physicians in a variety of disciplines that offer feedback to each team during this process we call design review, which is a 5 times a year presentation of the progress of the team. So the physicians interact then, as well as business people and other interested parties from the university.
So do the students get credit for being part of this? Academic credit? Especially if it's not part of their senior thesis.
If it's not part of your senior design project, no.
Okay.
Do not.
Okay.
So this is really about being driven and the curiosity and the
drive.
Opportunity to really be part of something very special and unique.
For sure, but when it comes to learning things, you can actually learn a lot more in a project like MedLaunch than you can in a course at the university.
Absolutely.
And
you're
a lot more practical
I was going to say, you're learning from business people who are talking about cap tables like you talked about. Exactly. You know, financial projections. What does the whole business look like? Coming from an engineer's perspective, you might not not learn that in one of your classes.
Exactly.
And have you gone on, so you alluded to the fact that senior design project was a few years ago. So where are you now in the trajectory of things?
So it was actually 1 year ago. So
Okay.
I graduated
Feels like forever.
in 2017, but it does feel like a little bit longer. So we started in August, I suppose, or September of 2016, and worked throughout our senior year, worked through MedLaunch as well, completed that program in May of last year, and that's kind of when we really started with the founding of the business.
Okay.
MedLaunch is a great incubator, and it kind of helps you get started, but there is still kind of a gap between when you are actually running a business, from just completing the MedLaunch program.
Right.
So we dove in and went full-time, myself and two others, since May of last year. And this is with the company Phase 3 that I'm currently running. Last summer, we received a small research grant from the American College of Cardiology, kind of been doing some product development and a little bit of testing. We just a couple weeks ago received IRB approval, so we're going to start testing with our first patients very soon.
So that means he can work with human beings.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. IRB is the Institutional Review Board, so you have to ask hospitals usually before you can use their patients on stuff.
Yeah,
so,
it's that little legal thing.
Patient rights.
right.
We just want to make sure it's all covered.
Yeah, so our product's going to be in the hands of patients pretty soon.
Wow.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah.
We feel really good about the progress that we've made over the past 9 months or so. So we'll be coming up on a year.
Do you still have the advisors that you had before?
Oh yeah,
part of MedLaunch.
Even more so now, I think. We have a very accessible with John Hardin and Harry and a lot of other people are very accessible advisors for us.
That's great. So you're raising money, getting some traction, getting trials done.
Yep, we're coming right up on it. So.
Great.
Fantastic. And when we come back, we're going to learn more about what you're doing with Phase 3. I want to hear a little bit more about actually what's in the hands of patients, and also get a better sense of sort of what MedLaunch has in store for us as they're going into demo day in April.
I was going to say, I want to know some of the other projects that you guys are working on.
So we'll be right back.
BioSTL is a proud founding sponsor of this Entrepreneurially Thinking podcast, and we want you to know all about the great things they are up to. BioSTL fosters collaborative efforts to advance innovation and entrepreneurship that builds on St. Louis's world-class medical and plant biosciences. Their global STL initiative aims to build a direct link between St. Louis and other countries by recruiting high-growth international companies to establish a United States presence in St. Louis. You can learn more about BioSTL and the Global STL Initiative by visiting biostl.org. And for your renewed and continuing support, BioSTL, we say thank you.
Hi, I'm Lucas Rydberg, co-founder of Phase 3. To me, entrepreneurially thinking is all about asking yourself one question: how can I add value?
So, Lucas, you said that you're in this phase now. You're full-time, right out of college, working full-time on your startup. You're raising money, and you're going to have your device in the hands of patients. And you started with a portable EKG?
Yeah, that's kind of where we started.
And we know that companies pivot all the time, that part of the MedLaunch process is to help you figure out not only what the problem is that you're trying to solve, but the best ways to solve it. And we know that the minute customers, in this case patients and doctors and hospitals and all those folks get into the picture, that things pivot. So is that still what Phase 3 is?
Not necessarily. So we started with this mobile EKG device, like you said, and then we kind of realized that there's enough of those heart rate monitors and EKG devices out there already on the market.
Okay.
It wasn't for lack of the device not being great. Yeah, it's just she's pointing at her watch. Yeah. It's not for lack of Dan's device not being great. It was extremely accurate and it was awesome. But when it comes to, cutting down the price for patients and making it as accessible and affordable as possible, it just made more sense to go with commercially available heart rate monitors. Yeah. So what we're actually doing is providing a more accessible form of cardiac rehabilitation, which is essentially it's a medically supervised recovery program for people with heart disease. It's just like physical therapy, but for heart disease. So this program consists of exercise and education and changing your diet and quitting smoking or tobacco habits. And this is a really great program. I mean, those things I just listed, we all agree are really good for your health, right? But unfortunately, despite all of the benefits of this program of cardiac rehab, participation rates are super low.
Really?
So, yeah. So I'm talking 15% of people
and
complete
cardiac
these
rehab,
programs.
that means I've already had some type of cardiac incident,
exactly.
right? So this isn't like pre-incident. This is post bum ticker.
Exactly.
And,
What is the lack of a motivation, especially if people have been impacted like that? Because you would think they would be very motivated.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
it
like
can be
you said.
difficult. I mean, so there's a lot of literary evidence, almost redundantly, saying that patients don't have a lot of access to cardiac rehab, and that's the main reason for low compliance.
Okay.
There's also the argument that people just don't want to do it. No, they're lazy.
It's hard to change.
Yeah.
It's hard to change
Thank
habits.
you. Yes, they're lazy.
Yeah.
So, but some of the main problems,
I think
and
it's
we see
lack of
this-
access too, like you said.
Right.
If you don't have the access to a cardiac rehab program,
Then you could be highly motivated and still
Yeah.
not be able to do
Exactly.
That's
so
great.
it kind of boils down to transportation issues. Some people can't drive or they live too far from the program. Some people don't have great insurance, so the copays can really add up if you're doing this several
so you're
times
doing
a week.
this on a phone,
Yep.
smartphone that most people have access to some type of smartphone.
Exactly. Yeah. Smartphones are increasingly becoming a part of our daily lives.
That's great.
It's really good to use those in healthcare as well. So basically, we created this software platform where patients can participate in cardiac rehab, but they can use their smartphone. So that eliminates barriers like transportation and copays, inaccessibility, things for people who live in rural areas.
Right.
Yeah, so it makes it a lot easier for patients to take part in this.
So telemedicine,
really exciting program.
some aspects of telemedicine.
Yeah,
which is
telemedicine,
really cool.
mobile health, digital health, they say.
And are you seeing higher compliance?
So we are about to test
That's what the
our
clinical
product.
trial is.
I figured. I just wasn't sure where the evidence
However,
was pointing.
there is a lot of predicate data suggesting that compliance is much higher if you are able to increase access to these programs.
Wow. So, John, what kind of, this is a great technology and company that's formed out of MedLaunch.
Thank you.
What are the other types of companies that you guys have formed? Not something coming up with Demo Day, but what are the other companies or projects that have come out of MedLaunch that have now become companies that are developing?
Absolutely. Well, phase 3 is really the first for the formal and full graduate of our program.
Okay.
Our process, and I'm going to talk about phase 1 and phase 2 of MedLaunch, and I realize we have phase 3 company here on the couch, so it might be a little confusing.
Okay, so step 1 of MedLaunch, step 2 of MedLaunch, phase 3
Step
is
1 and step
actually...
2.
Can we call them stages? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
Just for the purposes of this conversation.
Right.
Stage 1 of MedLaunch is really the problem, the solution to the problem, and a business model around that solution. So it's 5 months of very intense work and presentation on basically creating an investor deck to present at Demo Day. So the concept is there, the solution is there, the market is there, the pathways to market are there, all considered as part of step 1
All right.
for MedLaunch. Okay. Step 2 is what happens after Demo Day. And I think this really separates MedLaunch from other student-led incubator programs around the country because there is a step 2 in the process. And that's where we work intensely with the companies that choose to go on and we think have the wherewithal to go on to really turn that into a business. So that's exactly what Lucas and his colleagues are doing right now. Now, we are a bit selective in that because as the question came up earlier, what do you do with a problem that has no market?
Right. So, like when the physician knows there's a problem, it could be a real problem within the clinical setting, but there may not be a business model around it. What happens then?
Well, what we try to do is brainstorm and find a platform where there is a solution. So, for instance, with Lucas's project, phase 3, he came with portable EKG and realized immediately there's not much of a market for that. But the pivot was away from portable EKG to an application of this via the smartphone for enhancing cardiac rehab. So we try to find a sweet spot for the opportunity, but in reality, some projects terminate at demo day because there's really nowhere to go beyond.
And how does the physician, I mean, that's interesting because, they're bringing their idea to you thinking that, oh, this is the next great thing. How do you
manage the expectations of your physicians who help you source these problems?
Exactly. A lot of donuts?
Says Dr. Cheryl Watkins Moore.
There we go. Very good. I wish it were that easy. But in reality, it's not proven to be that much of a problem because when one examines rationally the market for a problem and has that conversation in that setting of rational discussion, it's pretty immediately understood.
That's good.
And I think we've been able to, the teams have been very creative in finding ways to find markets for what they're doing. But at the end of the day, one of the key things in entrepreneurship is understanding when enough is enough.
Right.
And so this is a very real-world exercise in that process as well.
I was going to say, I think what's really unique about what you just talked about, John, is that unlike other student-focused organizations that do the first stage one probably really well, being able to discern what's a real business, what has a capability to really move forward is the expertise from your advisors and your mentors, because you have that expertise to understand, this is not something we can move. But I also like the fact that you talked about looking for alternative opportunities for maybe that solution, which is great.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from students who've been through the process and, unlike Lucas in phase 3, aren't progressing on with a company, but instead are either continuing their academic or doing something else? Just like we said before, MedLaunch is in addition to everything else they're doing.
Yes.
Well, I think the best testimony to that is the fact that we have lots of people who've been involved with MedLaunch for 3 years.
Right.
And went through a project team and perhaps didn't move on because Lucas's project is the first to move on.
Right.
But they're still involved as leaders. They're still involved as part of the team.
So they come back.
They come back because of the experience of really being able to build something, whether it's going to long-term work in the world or not, but being able to build something with a multidisciplinary team is not part of the educational process in the School of Engineering, the School of Medicine, or
even the School of Business.
Actually, and it sits well on your resume because as a student graduating from undergrad to say, hey, I've been involved evaluating opportunities, being part of developing opportunities. If I were a hiring manager and that came across my desk, I think that would be something I would say, hey, I want this guy on my team.
For sure, because it's not in a lot of other places you don't really get that experience of taking a project from the very initial concept phase all the way through development. Like you said, you identify the problem, you identify solutions. You don't really do that in university very much, even though some senior design projects might try and make it seem like you're doing that. You really aren't getting you're not solving the whole problem. You're not getting the entire picture.
And you guys use the business model canvas as part of your process, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we use that at Square One. It's one of those tools that's used throughout our ecosystem as well as the entrepreneurship ecosystem writ large that really helps in all of these disciplines to help really suss out what problem are we solving, for whom are we solving it, and can we actually make any money off of this.
Exactly. And very succinctly and quickly instead of sitting there writing a business plan that that you're like 20 pages later
They're not dead. They just come a little later and aren't quite as long as they used to be.
Exactly.
So, John, you're an experienced entrepreneur. What are some of the experiences that you've brought to the table in your role with MedLaunch?
Well, most of my life has been spent on the commercial side of the equation in business and in early stage companies and what have you. So really identifying markets and creating a strategy to get to market and understanding the steps to get there are probably, from my personal experience, the greatest expertise I can offer these guys.
Have you always been in healthcare?
Yes. Okay. So I have 40 plus years in medical devices and have had the privilege of working with some of the absolute leaders over the years and then creating some nice companies in that space as well. But I think more importantly than a specific piece of experience is being able to talk about the mindset of what it takes to succeed in the startup environment, because it's very different than what it takes to succeed at Boeing or InBev or wherever else. And you really have to have a lot of grit, and you have to be willing to sit down and generate all the alternative solutions to your problem, lay them out on the table, analyze them, make a decision, and go that way. And that's what these guys in Phase 3 have been great at. That's what a lot of our teams are very good at, and that's what we try to coach around.
So what do you see, since you've been in healthcare for a long time?
Not that long time.
Longer than Lucas.
Longer than Lucas, right. And I've been in the industry for a long time as well. What do you see as how the industry has changed with the type of projects these kids are getting? Sorry, you're not a kid, but these young adults are getting involved with, because I think from the time that, when I was in healthcare as a physician, you didn't have the technology. You didn't have the smartphones. You didn't have that. Where do you see, businesses going and technology going in this space?
Wow, that's a really long answer. I'm sorry, but I'm going to try to make it short.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Where do you see the market going?
Well, I think we're going to be excessively outcome-driven with devices and biotech and pharma, and we're going to have to prove great outcomes in very large epidemiologically. Please edit that, too.
Sounds like saying entrepreneurially.
Absolutely. Easy for me to say. But I mean, we're really going to have to prove outcomes, and not just clinical outcomes, but economic outcomes. The biggest change I've seen in the last 40 years is the fact that economics really drives decisions at the hospital level, at the healthcare system level, across the board in our society. 40 years ago, if you invented a better mousetrap, they couldn't wait to get their hands on it.
Right.
Today, if you invent a better mousetrap and the users love it, it could be 18 months before it gets through all the committee work and all the bureaucracy that has to get there, and a lot of that is validating cost effectiveness and clinical effectiveness.
Right.
So you have to have your story really tightened down well in that regard.
And as a newer entrant to the healthcare field, Lucas, what are you excited about? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, I think John made a lot of good points in there. We really are seeing a pretty significant shift to value-based healthcare. So for a long time, we've been in a very fee-for-service kind of discrete. You as a healthcare provider perform some service for your patient and then bill their insurance directly for that. But the way that we're seeing healthcare going is you perform some service for a patient, you measure the outcomes, you measure the cost efficiency of it, and then you retroactively get reimbursed for it. And we're seeing this in legislation as well. So the CMS, Center for Medicare, has said that they want to tie at least 50% of all fee-for-service payments now to value by the end of this year. So there's stuff like MIPS and MACRA and all kinds
sorts of acronyms and jargon.
Yeah, actually, my favorite's MACRA because it's the Medicare Medicare Access and CHIP Reauthorization Act, and CHIP is an acronym also.
Yes.
So they've started nesting acronyms inside of other acronyms.
But this is all good for the patient. This is great because, when you look at outcomes data, this is great for physicians, all of that.
It's where we have to go.
It's all about aligning the incentives between the consumers of healthcare and the providers of healthcare. And you're really finding more and more companies like ours trying to find the best solution for what works best for the patient, what saves them money and time, but also what is efficient for hospitals to actually provide those services to patients.
So, John, what's next for MedLaunch? What are you guys looking to do?
Well, we want to continue to expand the program. We're looking for great problems to solve, and we want to engage more students and potentially engage on a broader geographic basis here in the St. Louis area.
I was going to say, I heard a little bird tell me that you guys are talking to some other institutions, maybe close by, to engage other students. So it's not just the SLU students, it's engaging other other
local
folks
universities.
as well.
That is indeed potentially so. It's a little early in the process to make definitive statements, but certainly
But I
something
think that's
we're open
great to be looking outside of the SLU population.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Fantastic. Well, as we wrap up our time together, I'm going to ask you both. I'll start with you, Lucas. What advice would you give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Oh, man. Well,
John's like, don't do it.
think before you, no, I would say reach out to the potential mentors around you, especially if you're in St. Louis, because the resources are there. And you can always find people who can help you with stuff, especially if you're a young person. Like, we're really good at a lot of things. We have a lot of energy. We could be really passionate. And if you pair that with a really qualified and experienced mentor, then you really have something that can go somewhere.
Cool. And John, what would your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs be other than to don't do it?
No, I was only kidding.
I know.
But Lucas's advice was so good, I don't know if I can top that. But I would say in general, be smart, be flexible, keep your eyes open, don't fall in love with your solution and your business. Be ready to pivot when you need to.
That's great.
Awesome.
Let me ask you this last question. If I'm a physician, I'm not at SLU, and I have a great idea, but I don't know who to turn to. If I hear this podcast, is this something where I can come to MedLaunch and say, hey, I'd love to get my products developed?
Absolutely. Come to our website. Let us know you're out there. We would love to interact with you and recruit your problem into our process.
So what is your website, sir?
That would be medlaunchstl.com.
Fabulous.
Fantastic.
And phase 3, can we keep tabs on you too?
Yes, absolutely. It's phase3health.com. That's PHAS3health.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for making time
you.
to be with us. We really appreciate you
course.
spending
It was a lot of fun.
your afternoon with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Changing the way you view new ventures, igniting your thinking about entrepreneurship. It's Entrepreneurially Thinking. Get connected and discover more. Visit our website for show notes, resources, information about our guests, upcoming events, and of course, all your favorite episodes. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them for us in the comment sections, and be sure to leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The best way to show love is to share. Let everybody know that you're thinking entrepreneurially. So visit our website, entrepreneuriallythinking.com. #ETHINKSTL. Entrepreneurially Thinking is another positive production of Rare Gem Productions. Thanks for listening.